All right, welcome back to the Population House podcast. We're back and we are talking with Matt Deuel from Dream On Studios, a local business in my area. Um, and today we're talking about Roswell, Georgia, a city that's north of Atlanta, and it's seen a lot of growth. So let's kick it off. So Matt, what was it like growing up in Roswell?
Awesome. Well, hey, Ethan, thanks so much for having me. Such an honor to be a guest on your show. Love the work that you're doing, and have enjoyed watching your show. And
Thank you very
man,
much.
what an honor to be your first guest. It's good stuff. Man, Roswell, Georgia, absolutely loved it. I um, was born in Marietta, Georgia, moved around a couple different areas in North Atlanta, but Roswell is really the place where we spent most of our lives in Georgia. When I say we, I mean me and my wife, Erica. It's where we had all three of our kids. We owned our first home in Roswell. So yeah, really from like, gosh, I want to say the time I was in like grade school all the way through, um, up until 2013-ish. We spent a ton of time in Roswell. So definitely saw, man, a lot of growth and just loved it as a city and as a home and as a community. But through my lifetime there, definitely saw times where it's like these 2-lane country roads, um, that you're kind of driving through, just sort of fields and open areas that over the years became 4-lane highways, 6-lane highways, 8-lane highways, surrounded with Targets and Home Depots and, Chick-fil-A's and Starbucks and all that stuff. So yeah, definitely saw a lot of growth for sure.
How was it when you were younger? Like the city.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, it was, like I said, it was definitely much smaller. I think the cool thing to know about Roswell is just some of the history of it. And I would say when I was younger, was definitely very much involved in some of the history aspects of it. So, you cool if I just kind of like talk through just like some
Yeah, yeah,
history? Okay.
yeah.
So Roswell, was named after the guy who really was responsible for founding it. His name is Roswell King, and he was a planter and a businessman from coastal Georgia. He visited the area in the 1830s, and he discovered this area around what's known as Vickery Creek. It's a small kind of tributary river that connects to the Chattahoochee River, and he really saw the potential of it to be a water powered mill type area. And so, mid 30s, 1830s, he returned to build a cotton mill right there and basically established the Roswell Manufacturing Company. And so out of that is really kind of the initial, this is what established, the town, and this is what people grew on. And so it was very much an industrial town. And through that, it had a really, key role in some of the Civil War aspects. Roswell was a very supportive industrial city in terms of the Confederate Army. And so one of the things from the textiles, they were known to develop a lot of the material for the soldiers' uniforms. And so when General Sherman from the Union Army came through his tour of burning down Atlanta and kind of coming after, the Confederate soldiers, destroying that mill was a big part of just trying to knock down the support of the Confederate Army. So fast forward a little bit, Roswell King's son Barrington, he ended up after the Civil War rebuilding the mill and kind of reestablishing that. And then, through the years, as Atlanta as a city grew and it became, more and more suburban areas around the perimeter of the city of Atlanta, Roswell really kind of became much more diverse at that point, right? And the industrial side, sort of died down and it just became a lot more about just a great place to live, a lot of good places to work, good retail, really amazing green space. I think one of the coolest things in Roswell is how much they preserved in terms of parks and natural space and greenways and bike paths and those sort of things. But what's definitely very present is that old Southern tradition, that old Southern history, kind of the antebellum Civil War era stuff. So there's a number of, and this was very, very close to our house where we lived. We lived in the historic district, and just around the corner from us, there were a couple of old, just Southern antebellum mansions. So Bullock Hall, Barrington Hall, just places that you can still tour today. And I'll stop nerding out on the facts here, but one last quick little story that's pretty cool. So Bullock Hall, which again is just this cool sort of Southern mansion that right now is pretty much a museum. That was the birthplace of Mittie Bullock, who became the mother of Franklin Roosevelt. So we have some US president history that, really came through Roswell. A Southern girl married a Northern guy. And so there was very much a very interesting dynamic that happened around that Civil War era of families from the North and South coming together. And then out of that family, became a president, as well as Mittie's granddaughter was Eleanor Roosevelt eventually. So some cool presidential connections that just kind of all come out of history. So really long answer to your question to say, I think growing up, I just had an appreciation for the history of Roswell and just some of those old Southern roots and yeah, just how the tradition and just the, establishment of those old things are definitely part of the community.
Awesome. Awesome. That's pretty cool. That's interesting to know. So you already told your what kind of area you lived in. So you kind of lived in like the downtown area?
Yeah, as far as Roswell is concerned, we lived in the historic district, and so we were really close to the town square. That Bakery Creek area that I talked about, where the Roswell Mill exists. Now, again, the Roswell Mill is no longer functional. It's basically just some old stone buildings, and there's a really cool just kind of waterfall thing that was built for the mill that runs through Vickery Creek. We were with just in a couple of blocks of all of those things. So yeah, a lot of nights and weekends, we would just be able to walk from our house down to the mill or over to the square, for some of the community events. And then, within, gosh, I'd say less than a mile away from us, it was an area called Canton Street, and Canton Street, is which again today is just massive in terms of restaurants and shops. And again, it's just kind of this old historic street that, yeah, just lots of cool things happen there. My very first job when I was 15 years old, I worked at Mittie's Tea Room, named after Mittie Bullock, and it was just kind of a small cafe tea room that was on Canton Street. And I worked in the kitchen and I washed dishes and helped the cooks work on the famous chicken salad every morning. And yeah, I just kind of grew up in that area. And to go back today and now see, just new restaurants, excuse me, brewery shops, that sort of thing. um, my wife's brother and his wife actually they own a restaurant on in that Canton Street area called Fellows Cafe, and it's just cool to see the growth and the cool things that have happened there.
Awesome. What was your favorite like thing growing up in Roswell?
Yeah, I think for me, something I mentioned a minute ago is just the parks and the greenways. There was and still is today just a really cool area. It was known as Roswell Recreation, and it was kind of the open fields, basketball court, tennis courts, those kind of things, just for recreation. And so played a lot of basketball there, had opportunity to be a part of, just some of the little league things and things around there. So yeah, I think just that aspect of the community was some of my favorite.
What was the vibe of the city back then? Like,
The vibe of the city, I would say, um, it was definitely going through the transition of being a pretty small city, but
mm,
starting to grow up into bigger. So, a couple of census things that I think you would enjoy and appreciate. So, in 1980, the Roswell census the population was 23,000. In 1990, it was 57,000. And then in 1995, it was between 75, 78,000. So you can see, from 1980 to 1995, to go from 23,000 to 78,000 is a skyrocket, right? And then
Yeah.
today it sits at 92,000 people. So, I mean, for me to look at that and say, man, over my lifetime, to see it go from 23,000 to 92,000 is just crazy. Um, yeah, I think that there was a lot that was under construction, for a lot of my life, a lot of road construction, a lot of neighborhoods being built. Atlanta is really known very much as a commuter city, and people, they drive into the city to go to work, or they drive, and so Roswell and kind of some of the surrounding communities really just represent home, like the place where people hang their hat, come home to be with their family. So I just say it's just lots of neighborhoods. So growing up, I think the vibe was just very much about growth, but similar to a lot of communities, and I think things similar to our community, things we've talked about before, is just that honoring the history, honoring the legacy, making sure that you preserve, some of those just really cool structures and buildings and businesses, while leaning into just the excitement of what it means to bring new stuff.
Okay, so what were the signs of the growth like in Roswell?
Yeah, I mean, just construction all over the place. I think seeing things there wasn't really, much in terms of like farming. It wasn't really like a farming community, but there were lots of like open fields. And so I remember again, so Highway 92, that's kind of like, that's the equivalent of, around here we have US 30, that runs through Warsaw. So in Roswell, and through a number of cities, Atlanta, there's Highway 92. Again, I remember that being a 2-lane country road, fields everywhere, a couple of stoplights, a couple of stop signs. I mean, if I were to show you, if I could show you a photo or video clip, I was trying to think through this. I mean, literally this one area I can think of where, there's a Starbucks and a bank on one corner, and then there's a Publix supermarket, and then there's a Home Depot, and then there's an Outback Steakhouse and a PetSmart. I think it's an 8-lane highway, like 4 lanes on each side, right? So it's like, to go from 2-lane country road, where all those places where I described, all that shopping, all that retail, were literally just fields. And now it's like full, like just parking lots, stores, streets, stoplights. Yeah, I'd say those are the signs of growth.
Did you feel the city was ever growing too fast?
Mm, man, great question. For me, I don't think so. And I mean, some of this stuff, I lived through it in like grade school, middle school, high school, and so I don't even know that some of this stuff was really necessarily on my radar. As much as maybe it was for like my parents or families or friends. I'm sure a lot of people were annoyed with that, with the traffic and with the congestion of growth. But man, I don't think anything necessarily hit my radar. I mean, what people definitely know now today in the area is the traffic, right? So it's like when you talk about an 8-lane highway, running through the town, I mean, you can just imagine, man, on a Friday going home from work, it takes a minute to get home. So I think that's probably the chief complaint that comes out of anybody that lives in Atlanta, is just traffic. So me personally, when we left Atlanta in 2014, I was spending 2 hours a day to go 8 miles to and from work. So basically an hour there, an hour back, and I was
Wow.
shot 8 miles, and that's what it took. So that's just some of the reality of living in a bigger place, of just that commitment of what it means to get around.
how did the growth change the city, like, by day or monthly? Or, like, did you see the city changing, like, or expanding?
Mhm. Yeah, no, definitely saw it expanding, and I think, for the most part, it was just exciting, right? It's that thing of, um, when you hear about something new that's coming, when you hear about, a new company or a new restaurant, a new coffee shop that wasn't there before, and now it's like, "Oh, man, like, we're getting a Chick-fil-A here. That's awesome. We're getting a Starbucks here. That's awesome." I think there was, generally just a lot of excitement about the new things that were coming into the community.
Do you remember, like, how the locals felt about it? Like, felt about the growth?
Um, yeah, I mean, gosh, I wish I was as civically minded as you are. You at your age, you definitely think about things on a different level than I think most folks your age do. And I wish that I had, because I really don't remember a lot. I remember lots of conversation about the mayors of Roswell and just some of the elections and the politics that went around that. And, I do remember that, some of those elections were based around just the growth. And, there's always people that they don't like change. They don't want to see change. And so they want things to be the way they are. And so, especially when you look at a southern city that has lots of rich southern tradition, some people are just saying like, "Hey, we don't want that change. We want things to stay the way they are." And then there's other people who are just like, "No, we're all in on change and we want to see growth." So yeah, I think those things were definitely present, and I just think that's part of community life everywhere. And I think the things that I've learned as I've gotten older is just the reality of, if you're not growing and you're not committed to that evolution as a community, the reality is you're dying. You're starting to fall behind, and there's going to be other communities that are willing to, um, pick up that slack or pick up that momentum and say, "Hey, we'll take it and run with it." And so, I think anytime you and your community can promote healthy, sustainable growth, it's a good thing. So yeah, while I wasn't super active back in those days, I would say if I could go back and do it over again, that's certainly where I think I would land.
Okay, so the alright, alright. So the biggest question of all is, do you ever think about moving back to Roswell?
Yeah, great question. Man, we go back and we visit at least once a year. Sometimes we get back a little bit more than that. It's about a 10-hour drive for us to get from here to there, and we like road trips, so we're happy to jump in the car and do that. um, to see some family, to see some friends. I would say I miss people, right? More than anything, I miss some of the people. I don't miss the traffic. I don't miss, some of the congestion. But I do. Every now and then, it's like to have a couple more options in terms of restaurants and entertainment and places to go. Like, yeah, man, I certainly love that. So, but no, as far as moving back, that's not really been something that's been on the radar for us. We love this community. We love what this community opens up for our family, and we just really believe in the future of this community. And so our hope is to be a part of just helping this community to grow in a really healthy and sustainable way. And we try to do that through our business here at Dream On, and just the other things that my wife and I and our family are involved in the community. So yeah, so we're pretty rooted here. I'm pretty happy here.
Yeah, well, that's all the questions that I wanted to ask you this
Awesome.
episode.
Awesome. Well, Ethan, thanks so much, man. I really appreciate it. And always fun to connect and talk with you. And man, just super excited about your passion and the work that you do and your curiosity around economic development and growth. So, man, huge shout out to you, and just say keep doing what you're doing. Keep learning, keep growing, and appreciate your voice in our community.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Awesome. All right. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, bye.